It's great to have you here, and we've had a huge interest in this topic, and we've got a fabulous collection of HR leaders, L&D and OD practitioners, and also people leading business joining us today. So thank you very much. It's great to have you with us. I think it also represents that this is such a hot topic, but also a topic where people are really craving an open, honest conversation. And that's what we want to have here today with you. So we're going to actually be really open. We're going to share warts and all about our own experiences, but also what we're learning as HR and business leaders on how you start to navigate this really complex terrain that is AI in the workplace. Okay, well, let's get into the conversation. In particular, when you joined and registered, we asked you what was your most burning concern when it came to AI, particularly AI in the workplace. And we had some really amazing answers, and we had such a huge response also to asking about that question. And so we've made a word cloud, as you do. And what's significant about the word cloud is that the word people, of course, comes through really loud and clear. And we've got people, human, team, data, effectiveness, and coming through is the idea of, some of the concerns as well. So the actual word concern started to come through quite strong. Also words like integrate, business, value, skills. So these are all the kind of topics we want to explore today. So it was really lovely to see that you were sharing them through your concerns. I wanted to actually share some of the actual statements that we also got from our audience. So I'm just going to read a few of those out. So, who leads on implementing people, HR, IT, or business? Thank you for that. That's going to be our first topic that we're going to discuss today. We've got ensuring AI solutions stay compliant while processing sensitive employee data. Also this idea of, the balance between efficiency and the human, which again is a key topic that we're going to explore today. There are still people in my team who are skeptical and don't see how fast this is moving. So they want some tips on how do you kind of get them to appreciate the environment that we're now operating in, but also, I suppose, give them some choice and agency. And I think that's part of this debate of, is it a fait accompli? Is it something that we must do, or do we actually have some choices as we go along? And then how to gain buy-in from teams who are concerned about the future of their roles, which I think is a big one. Overly simplified approach to AI cost cutting. So I think we are seeing that in some businesses. And then will it make us lazy and less creative? So we've started to see this term work slop, I think is the latest one that's come through. And then transparency is my top concern. We need to be open about when and how AI is used. So that's exactly another topic we're going to look at. And then my biggest concern is the lack of clear governance and ethical frameworks around AI use. Without proper policies, transparency, and accountability, there's a real risk of bias, data misuse, and inconsistent decision-making, which I think is an interesting one, that inconsistent decision-making. Where is AI adding value in learning and development? Laura, I'm definitely going to be hitting you up with that one. And how to use effectively to solve meaningful problems. And I think this is key. For me, it's actually a lot about how do you solve real business problems with AI? And that's going to really sit at the heart of the conversation we have today. Okay, is this for real? AI in the workplace, the what, the why, and the how. With me, I have two amazing people. We have Laura Keith, who is the CEO of Hive Learning and Hive Perform. And the reason I asked Laura to join us today is that Laura is leading businesses that are doing this. So I really wanted to hear real-world business case studies of how you use AI day to day in the work environment, but also how do you move it into actual production and into your product. So Laura, fabulous to have you join us. What's your thoughts so far about some of the comments that we've received from the audience and some of the kind of concerns that people are expressing?
Yeah, I mean, it was a fantastic word cloud. I think I resonated with every word that was in there. But I think the ones that stand out to me, the number one for me is actually data. It's going back to that classic, what gets measured gets done. And actually, if you want to embed something like AI into the business, looking at it as what's the impact you want it to create, and can you measure that impact and has it done it? And that will then create the focus for humans to lead in that way, to think about that kind of agile approach to it, like test, learn, human check, iterate. For me, data is a really critical part, but I love the fact that human pops out first because it's all about how the human interacts, how we build the mindset for it. The word that was missing for me is curiosity. So building the muscle for being curious. I think we have that those moments of trying AI and it being really disappointing. And I think it's the curiosity that pushes you past that into finding something that really you iterate and play with and explore and create something that's really useful.
Excellent. No, I think that's a fantastic comment. What I find interesting, however, about the word curiosity is it's not something you can just instantly, I don't know, tell someone to do. And so I think today let's explore how you build that environment that people feel, I suppose, safe enough to step into that curiosity. Or perhaps, like one comment was, people don't understand how fast this is moving. And so maybe that's also helping them appreciate the context that they're operating in. Possibly like your example, sort of pushing people into trying it. I'll just say a few words about Helen while she's rejoining. So Helen was CPO at Ogilvy, and then, of course, also Weber Shandwick. And both organizations leaders in media and advertisement and marketing and the creative space. Helen's worked in that area for years and has really kind of lent into not just how do you build great teams in those kind of environments, but also how do you sort of incorporate human-centered design and marketing practices into the world of HR. Many moons ago, Helen actually sent someone in her team to one of my Agile HR programs, and the story continues to Helen being here today. So there's a lot of connections between the hosts and the panel today, and we've all known each other for many years and also been watching what each other's doing in their various businesses and really kind of learning from each other. So it's a great thing to have Laura and Helen with me today. I'm the CEO of PXO Culture and also the principal consultant. So when you work with PXO Culture, you often work with me. I also am the author of Agile HR and Agile Learning and Development, and I am passionate about how do we start to build co-intelligence in the workplace. This is the new frontier. Whether we like it or not, we are now working with machines, and we need to ensure we have agency and choice in how we build that future of work. And that's what I really want to explore today. Okay, so today we're talking about AI and Gen AI. So kind of what is it and what are we really talking about? So a few kind of things to sort of set the scene. There is a difference between AI and Gen AI. So AI is sort of the broad brush that describes this environment of computers or machines that do tasks that require human intelligence. And that's been developing for quite a while, and that's been influencing how we live and work for a number of years. Particularly the word algorithm now kind of influences how we consume so much, from what we watch on television to how we engage with social media. Gen AI is sort of a new terrain where actually the computer or the machine creates new things. So that might be text, it might be images, it might be code. So it creates content. And by doing that, it learns. So the idea is it continuously learns and moves forward with kind of taking in information and being able to create new content. Now, what's interesting is that once we go into the world of Gen AI, we're talking about something that is probabilistic, so rather than deterministic. And this means that there is an element of randomness. There is an element of, probability that it's working with. And this is why you hear discussions such as hallucinations. It's that you cannot always fully predict the outcome of Gen AI. And that's what makes it so intriguing as we start to bring it into the workplace. A couple of other things around this topic is that it's moving so fast. No one really is the leader in this because we're all learning together. And we're going to talk a bit about some of the new things coming in. But what this means is that actually there's sort of an incremental or iterative way that you need to make decisions in the workplace about how you start to use it and how you bring it into the production and the product that you're creating. Laura, would you mind commenting a little bit on sort of that setting the scene, and in particular this idea of deterministic versus probabilistic and how that kind of, I suppose, really impacts leading a business? So what's kind of changed as we've brought this new kind of tool in?
Yeah, I thought it was a great description of both AI and Gen AI. So not much more to add in, but I think what it means for those that don't know me, I run a business where we're building products. It's an AI native. Part of the business is traditional, the other half is AI native. And when you're building products using Gen AI from scratch, it's all about one, being really careful what you're building for. So does it need to be deterministic? Is that the right output? And when you're building with probabilistic, can't say that, you're looking at a huge amount of R&D, a huge amount of testing, and looking at outcomes and working out whether it's giving you value. And is it, if you run the same test over and over again, is it giving a consistency in response? And does that response add value to the end user? So for me, agile HR is the way in which you manage in a probabilistic world using technology that is using Gen AI. And there's different models. So you can use open source, which is where you're opening yourself up to much more hallucination. And you can use closed source, and you can use products that have been built to test and learn and augment and automate more effectively. So the whole point and reason why we're having this conversation, because there's lots of different ways in which you can do this. There's lots of unknowns, and there's lots of different people are using the word in a way that feels deterministic when it isn't. So I think this is why constant ongoing conversations around this are really important, and diving into the detail and understanding how it works is really critical to navigate how you best optimize it in your own workplaces.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you so much, Laura, and really great to kind of unpack some of the language. Someone's made a comment, the language sounds complex, but it's probably sort of understanding some of the principles behind it, isn't it? This idea of, what you can predict and what you can't, I suppose, and how you then work with that. We're experimenting today with a new piece of tech. So as you can see, not everything goes as smoothly as you want. We've introduced you, Helen, and sung your praises. What we're also just doing at the moment is getting our head around what is AI, what is Gen AI, and what does this kind of mean for the workplace. I'm just going to read out one of the sort of first comments that's come through on chat. So one of the challenges I see when talking to people who don't really understand Gen AI is a tendency to anthropomorphize the tech to talk about its thinking. It's not AGI or AGI is well away yet. Okay, so it's just running on probabilities of which word to write next for the best outcome based on what's gone before and the context. But people need to understand that it's a probability machine, not an artificial person. Any comments on that, Laura, or sort of kind of further kind of confirms what we've been talking about?
Yeah, spot on. And I think for those that want to dive into it a little bit more, it's really worth just spending some time on ChatGPT or any other Google if you want to, looking at retrieval augmented generation, because it describes how it works. And I think that's just spending some time making sure you understand that will help you to understand how it's making the decisions around which information to pull for you. So that's kind of a really nice place to start, I think, looking at RAG. We probably don't have time to go into it now, but that's what I'd recommend. And I think Chris makes a very good point there as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I would encourage everyone to do that as a starting point, is actually just what are the basics. And don't worry, we're all learning. No one is leading this. Everyone's learning together. So, and I think that's my biggest call out today is start with basics, understand, some of the terms, and but also know that no one is the expert, particularly in the work environment. So we're all learning together. I'm going to get into our first topic, and Helen, I'm going to come to you very soon. So when we started to look at this and what we wanted to talk about today, what keeps coming up is this debate between IT versus HR versus operations. Who's leading this transformation when it comes to the workplace? And the reason I put up the head or CEO of NVIDIA is recently he was quoted as saying, IT is now the new HR. I have then spoken to a few IT leaders who are a bit mortified by that, because there is a lot here around the humans in the workplace, strategic workforce planning, and skills development that are just as important as the actual tech itself, sometimes possibly even more. Because what we've just heard from Laura is there's something about how you work with this tech, not just what the tech does. Helen, I'd love to go over to you first, because I know you've actually experienced this firsthand in your role as CPO, and also it's led to you needing to kind of upskill in this area as well. So what's your comments on this debate?
Yeah, 100%. I think so. At the end of what year are we? At the end of 23, in my last role, I became aware of a global task force for AI implementation across the organisation I was then working at. There was not one person from the HR function on this task force. It was very led by the CTO, the early adopters, loads of people walking around with iPads. The client teams were represented on there, no one from the people function. So I did have to, and I'm not very good at sharp elbows, but on this one I had to sharp elbow. I'm so passionate about the fact that this is the biggest behaviour change, probably since the Industrial Revolution, and it was being led by tech. That's not to say, of course, tech should be part of the leadership on this. They've got the skills, they're often the early adopters, etc. They've got the strategy around the tech. But I do fundamentally believe that this is where we have to make our chief technology officers or equivalent our best friends. So we either make them our best friends, or as some big organisations are already doing, they're actually merging departments. So Microsoft, is it ServiceNow, have got the chief people officer. It's also chief people officer and AI enablement officer. So you can see it's converging, because you can't do one without the other. This is a massive behaviour change. Once I was able to get my head of learning and development at the time onto that task force, we were able to then, really make it more about programmatic learning. So we created this, what we called an AI maturity model for the organisation, going, what are the fundamentals we need to start with? You guys are all over there, the early adopters, who are, to your point, talking in this very technical language that people aren't necessarily caught up with. And we know that AI anxiety is real. It's something like 61% of the current workforce are scared for their jobs, scared that they're not upskilling quickly enough, feeling already like they can't say, I don't think I'm caught up. So I do think fundamentally we either need to bring the departments together, bring the functions together, or just look at different ways of working now. And I was talking about this only last week. We need to make those CTOs our best friends.
Definitely. And so for me, a lot of transformation has always been about a multidisciplined approach. And I think that as this tech progresses, it demonstrates why that is fundamental, because everyone's an expert at different things, and we have to bring that together to build the right approach. No one can control all of this or know it all. And I think that's been happening in the workplace for a while now. I think that's why, I became such a supporter of agility and T-shaped teams. But I really feel that now more than ever, that's what this represents, a kind of co-intelligence across all functions. Yeah. I think also what's interesting is about that anxiety stat, because I also read some stats around that people are also reluctant to share that they've used AI to help them get a job done, because then they think that people are thinking they don't have the skills and they're going to be more likely replaced. So we've got this tension now of people are a little bit scared that AI is going to take their job, but also they're scared to tell people that they're using it because they might be seen as less able, which it's this
absolutely and laziness as well. I know that's come through, particularly in the younger generation, that they're too scared to say they've used it in case it looks like they're taking shortcuts. And I think that's the bit where you kind of go, this is about enriching our ways of working, not replacing. It's such a massive topic, isn't it?
It is. I know. So enrichment, I think, is a key word.
Yeah.
Laura, can I go to you now? And if you would be able to offer some practical examples of what this looks like at Hive, because when we were talking about this, we started with the IT and HR, and you actually said, we need to add operations in there as well. So tell us a bit more of how this looks for you on the ground.
Yeah, I think I love the way you sum it up. You always say things in a much better way than I do, Natal. But it's a multidisciplinary approach, right? This isn't a sits in a department thing. This is, if you want to build, it's culture, right? It's if you want to build the change across the organisation, it's got to be led from the CEO. So if your CEO is not using it, then you're going to really struggle. And not just using it, being open about using it and driving the change and modelling the behaviours as should every leader in the business. Because we a while ago, across the portfolio of companies I work alongside, had a role called the AI smoke jumper. It was this expert who'd come in and start using it. But actually, I think it creates more fear, because it's like, here's this super person with loads of expertise that is going to come in and do it, and I'll just sit here and crack on. And I think it's doing things like that actually creates more of the fear in the organisation. So some of the practical things we did, one is, it comes from me as a CEO at the top, and actually our investment group too. This is what you're doing. Very clear, very straight. We're using it. We tie it into every part of what we do. And actually operations were really key for us, because Gen AI can be used at an individual level to increase individual work performance. But if you want to really shift the dial on your business performance, you've got to connect the disciplines. You've got to have everybody working together. And so where you apply AI data into a workflow, into a business problem you want to solve, so identify the problem you want to solve, measure it. What are you currently doing today? What output do you expect tomorrow? And what multifunctional team can you pull together, create the space for them to solve that problem, and then start to track it? You use an iterative approach. I quite like, we always used to use test, learn, iterate. And for us now, it's test, learn, data quality, check, and then iterate. And so for us, kind of building this space where ops became really critical at like connecting the right people across the business, identifying all those problems that quite often actually fall through the cracks because nobody owns them. They're the best problems to solve. And then for us, the biggest shift in performance came when we implemented hackathons. So multidisciplinary teams create the space for people to take on a problem, think about and play around, be creative, be curious with how to solve it, present it back to the business, and then create the space for people to then go and apply it. And I think you've got to think about it from every single angle of the business. So there's like really strong comms, multidisciplinary teams, measure the outcomes that you expect. So a lot of businesses now are restructuring. If you're restructuring, then you're constraining your resources. So how could you create the same output on a smaller base? Or if you're not restructuring, you should be thinking about how do you double your output if you're going to apply AI in this space, because you don't want to apply it for the sake of nothing. That's where people, again, get a little bit, what's the point? So that's for me, back to the point at the beginning, data is really key, measuring outcomes, pushing it through every part of the business. And then a big thing, I think, for what's in it for me, for individuals is we work in a smaller business. We're not one of the big enterprise players, so we don't match the salaries necessarily of some of the roles in the bigger companies. But what I can do is create a space for you to build a CV, which is going to enhance your skills. It's going to give you the space where you can play with these tools. If they're not using N8N, Make.com, Replit to practice and also just make a difference to what they're doing daily, and talk about it and talk about the impact that they've made. That's what I can give everyone in the organisation right now, and being very clear on the comms in that is critical. So yeah, that's some of the practical things. I mean, there's tons of little things that we do around that, but and we failed numerous times. So the AI smoke jumper was a failure because it created more fear. But yeah, creating safe places for people to play, creating the culture of failure, creating a culture of data. Those types of things I think are really critical, and then that ops role where they can connect dots has been really valuable for us.
Yeah, great. I love that term, creating a sense of play or a place of play. I think that's a great term. But also this idea of just real-time experimentation, which we're going to look at next. Just looking at some of the comments that are coming through, I'm just going to share some here. So it is just worker smarter. I think working smarter. Yeah. Humans still need to be making the decisions, not AI. We are looking at using AI and automation for transactional activities, still with the human oversight. And then Tara, totally agree, but the stigma of AI exists, and a lot, I believe, is down to the use of it without security or scrutiny. The posts on LinkedIn that have clearly not being proofread, the CVs created by AI don't make sense, the assignments being handed in, again, without proofreading, etc. So yeah, we've got this, and I'm definitely going to take that on as a bit of a mantra, Laura. The test, learn, data check, and then iterate. And so that moves into the next topic that we wanted to look at, which is around agility. And I've already said that I feel that this topic, or AI, the debate of AI, is so much like how we were talking about business agility a number of years ago. Everyone went, oh, I've got to go agile because the world is changing and that's the answer. But agile ways of working were never the answer. It was a way to go and find answers to your existing business problems. And I really feel that there's a lot of crossover here. And so, Laura, you just touched on it, you don't just use AI for the sake of AI. And we've had a big rush in organizations essentially to the shiny new thing. And but the only way to really kind of learn and grow is to embrace the agility aspect of this. So experimentation, test and learn, understanding what it looks, feels, and sounds like in the workplace. So let's just have let's talk a little bit about this. Helen, I know when we've talked about this before, you've looked at low-hanging fruit as a kind of an approach. Can you tell me a bit about that?
So I think going back to Laura's point actually about what is the problem you're trying to solve, and AI isn't going to solve all your problems, and you are absolutely going to need human checking. I mean, I redid my CV recently with a platform, and the AI suggested changes were nonsense. So, you know, we are going to still absolutely need people to do the checking. I think in terms of low hanging fruit, if you do those problem statements, so for example, if you're, because I don't know where everyone's from in terms of the audience on this, but if you're working in an HR or a people function, for example, if you work with your team, so those hackathons, you can do mini hackathons by team and go, what are our problem statements? What are we trying to solve? And go for the easier things that have an instant solve. Like, do you create chat bots, for example, that take away the noise in your team? I'm sure it will resonate with many people on here about people seem unable to calculate what holiday they've got left for the year. That is a really easy win, right? That doesn't take much in terms of creating a chatbot that someone can just ask a question instead of taking up your, whether it's shared services or smaller HR functions. Those are the noisy questions, the repeat questions that you could probably go, is there an opportunity to use AI within our organisation? And to Laura's point, it doesn't have to, you don't have to be somewhere where you've got those big enterprise solutions for that. You know, and again, that's where I would encourage people to really start to, if you don't feel you've got the skills yet or understand how to navigate it, start to really embrace, because this isn't going away. But if you start to look at it as an opportunity rather than something that's quite frightening and big and buzzwordy, because, you know, to your point, we can see all our CEOs are thinking, oh, this is shiny. This is, and then all the CFOs are going, oh, we can save loads of headcount and money by using AI. And it's just not as simple as that. So, you know, start to look at where those low hanging fruit opportunities are. That's what I would do, because it's also a way of experimenting, to Laura's point.
Totally, exactly. They go hand in hand. And I love connecting it to the problem statement. That's really great. So we've got a comment from Maria. The assumption that AI will duplicate productivity is short-sighted. The approach should be A/B tested instead. Exactly. So if we feel that AI can enhance a process, we need to test that that is actually possible. Laura, can I go to you? And I know this is what this is what you do at Hive and Hive Perform. And also, I think when you talked recently, you found that your platforms were even being used to help people experiment with AI to then go and use some of the big platforms like Copilot, etc. So can you tell us a little bit about what experimentation is looking like for you?
Yeah, and I totally agree with Maria. I think it was probably my words before that said you should think about increasing productivity. I think just I agree that you should be setting hypotheses for change and then testing and iterating to get there, as opposed to like, yes, let's just make this change and it should double productivity. So I'm with you, Maria. Yeah, we've been working alongside some large enterprises recently where the adoption of Copilot is something that they've been has been a challenge. So you know, this isn't a new problem. Handing a tool, a tech tool, a learning tool, a a HR tool in any format into a business and just going use it, quite often falls flat. I can imagine if there's a ton of people in HR on here who've tried to do a large scale rollout of tech and know how painful that really is. And it's the same, and with AI tools and Copilot in particular. And I think the thing with Copilot is it has so many different applications. So to just go, here's a tool, everybody use it, is really hard without doing all of the things that go around that, which is build the right mindset, build the safe space to play, the right culture, the right comms to be able to do it, but then also helping connect people to share about how do I go about approaching using this tool. If I've got a tool but I don't know where to apply it, what's the best way in which I can both for myself test and learn? What does test and learn look like? What areas should I apply that to? But then also, how do I encourage my team to? How do I create the right comms, the right space, the right encouragement, the right development for people to then go and use Copilot in a way that's relevant for their role, which might be different to your role as a manager in the business. So we've been working alongside organisations to create almost the learning space. So going back to the IT, HR, ops, and I think some things that Helen touched on earlier, like HR and learning have a huge place to play in adoption of in change management, in adoption of new tools, adoption and changing the way we manage our day-to-day workflow. And so, yeah, we've been working alongside organisations to look at, what are the right behaviours? How do we share? How do we give examples across the organisation, create the space for people to say, well, I did this with the team and it worked really well, not just from what they used the tool for, but here's how I talked about it and it landed well, or here's how I created the space for us to play, here's how I created recognition of AI usage across my team. And so being able to connect people and create the change together, but also build the muscle around change management instead of just throwing AI and tools at people and expect them to use it. And actually what we found is the adoption rates of Hive plus Copilot have together both massively increased up to kind of 80% plus across the organisation. So I think when you take a multi-focused approach to adopting it, it can really help. And that value that Helen talked to of, so like elbowing your way in, it's a shame that you have to use your elbows, but elbowing your way in as HR and L&D to help kind of create the right environment for people to adopt, not just Copilot, but any other tools is really key.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic example. And one that I would also add for people is looking at how you bring it into some of your existing ways of working to run that short experiment. So if, I run a lot of design thinking programs, for example, and it was really natural to bring AI in at different steps. So to help you research, to help you formulate the problem statement, to run a hypothesis and test results without having to go out and do it for real. So there's actually a lot of moments in your everyday already of how you're working that you can start to bring this in. I love this example of how actually creating a kind of a learning space over here helps you then go and use the main tool in the business. And that actually builds up these sort of user case studies that you need. We've just had one question come in, and I'll just go straight back to Laura, and then I'll get Helen to comment as well, is how did you deal with the assumption of C-suite that it just works?
I could do this from two angles because I am C-suite and I think it does just work. But I also have the VC above us who were the first heavy-handed, it just works, go, go, go. So how did I deal with that? I think with the it just works attitude, I think I just take that and run with it of, okay, so I'll take that as it works. So I'm going to go and experiment. So you've given me the free rein to use. I'm going to then put the guardrails and the processes in place to work out whether it works. So I think for me, I take the assumption at the top of place to like go do, and then go and actually work out and test whether it does or it doesn't, and create my case study and create the evidence of where it does work and where it might not. But I think, taking it as a go, and then managing it effectively myself, and then it's that stakeholder management backup of, okay, we did this here, but actually it doesn't work because of these reasons and the data is not credible enough, and it's going to take, building a product with a board who quite often, will say things like, oh, just do this. Oh, God, just do that. We need to put a load of rigor and, go and use our product to score someone's performance in a sales call. So that you can't just run that through an LLM and create a score, because the consistency of scoring, the depth of scoring, it's incredibly detailed in how to get that right. But actually, the idea of go and do scoring is probably right. And so let's go and work out what our guardrails are, what is right, what does good look like, where does it not work, what are the barriers, And so, taking it as a flag to go and play, and then playing back the stakeholders effectively, I think is probably what I do with it. But maybe Alice has got a slightly different example. But Helen, I don't know how you would manage this too.
I mean, again, when I was in my last role, I was on the C-suite. I think my biggest persuasion points maybe were the CFO, because I think CFOs are particularly going, if I invest this, what's the payback? I think with that, the basic, to Laura's point about guardrails, there's something about having your roadmap and being really clear on what that looks like. So when I was talking about the AI maturity model, and if you Google AI maturity models, you can find lots of different ones, but the one that we created as a bespoke one for our organisation really laid out how we were going to take our people with us, what was the test and learn environment, what were the policies, what were the, how were we going to measure where we were organisationally. And I know I was part of a large organisation, but we also had, this can also absolutely work in SMEs or very small organisations, because you just use focus groups instead of surveys or whatever that might look like. But to Laura's point, you need the data points, and also you need your clean data. So if your data isn't robust, and this, that old expression from the early 90s, garbage in, garbage out, if your data isn't fantastic, you're not going to be creating anything very helpful. And I know we're going to talk about policy in a second, Natal, so I won't come on to that just yet, but yeah.
Well, it was a lovely segue, actually, into the next topic, which is trustworthiness. And I think this is probably starts to go to the heart of the tension that people are feeling around AI in the workplace. And that on one hand, we've got, C-suite saying, yeah, it works, off we go, we're all in. On another hand, we've got big debates in media at the moment around the use of copyright material to simply train the machines that we're using. And actually sort of that underpins the capitalist system in which we work. These are huge, big questions around our democratic structures and rights. And then another one is simply, how do you bring it into a workplace in a safe enough way to use it well, but also a safe enough way that protects people's data and also protects people's, I suppose, well-being at the same time. So when we were talking about this, we likened it a lot, actually, to social media policy. I'm not sure if anyone remembers that. Quite a number of years ago, you had this thing where social media started to get bigger, and people were sitting there, on their phones at their desk, tweeting. Well, you don't even tweet anymore, you X, but you're tweeting about the business, and that was causing mayhem, because people were like, oh my God, you can't just go and say that about our business online. So we rushed into social media policy to try and set these guardrails. But again, the whole thing was evolving at the same time. And it was really similar, where people could access their own tech and do it immediately, versus if they went through the sort of the business systems, it was slower, it was clunky, it usually wasn't as advanced, and it felt quite constricted. So Helen, what's your comments around this? How do we build this environment of trust? How do we show people how to use AI effectively? Do we write policy? What's your thoughts on this one?
So I think if you've already started rolling out your AI thinking and opportunities, and you don't have the policy, I would urge you to go back to the beginning and create your policy. I think it's the foundational rock. And I'm not a big policy person, by the way, so don't think that I'm one of these HR people that loves the policy, because I really don't. However, for this, it will give people the psychological safety to know that they can experiment where they experiment, etc., where they are allowed to use it. And all we have to look at is the Deloitte are being sued by the Australian government because huge swathes of a report were written by generative AI. And as I came back onto the call, Laura, I think you were talking about hallucinogenic AI. And basically, they figured out that it was referencing case studies that don't exist, for example. So obviously, Deloitte, I mean, you know, that's a massive name, right? And the Australian government is suing them. So you kind of go, if we don't give people that safety and the guardrails, they're probably going to, a lot will either become frozen with fear and do nothing, or might run away and do something that they really shouldn't be doing. And how on earth can you then have that conversation with someone if you haven't given them those guardrails? And Natal, you know, talking about that social media policy, we couldn't figure out, this is a good few years ago, why our people weren't advocating for where I used to work online. And, you know, because my previous place of work, we just had to open an envelope and everyone would be putting it on LinkedIn, I'm so proud to work here, etc. Whereas I joined somewhere where no one was putting anything. And it was because the social media, we did some insights. The social media policy was like 20 pages long. It was, you shall not do this without explicit permission. So everyone went, it's just easier, therefore, to never post about where I work, even if it's positive. So we had to unpick that, and it was those words that just kept playing through my mind when we were looking at this. So if you're working somewhere, again, which is part of a larger organisation, you've got a very complex policy, go back to those policy writers and talk about, can we put this into plain English? Can we make this simpler for people to access and understand? If you're not there yet and you're creating that policy, I would urge you to just keep it as simple as possible so that it's accessible and people understand what's expected of them, what is an absolute no-go, where can I experiment, and what about my data, and that, you know, go back to that sensitive data training as well. So hopefully I haven't overcomplicated that, but yeah, I think without it, you just don't have your foundations.
Yeah, definitely. So I've just put up a kind of flash of policy versus playbook. And I think this is, you know, for a long time now, the three of us have advocated that really policy is about setting some criteria for something that you know is working well or you've made a decision on. For some of this, you need to set more of a playbook, a kind of, here are the rules of engagement based on what we know now. And we're going to come back to you in 3 months' time or 6 months' time with an update because the tech is moving so quickly. But this is where we feel very certain that we can use it in this way. But these areas we're not going near at the moment, or that's too risky for our business for this reason. So I think transparency here is key, and actually sharing that it's an iterative kind of way of working. Yeah. So conscious of time, so I'm actually going to just move forward, if that's okay. We're going to also just sort of leave you with what we think are our practical top tips. And this big question sort of, okay, well, this is all well and good, but how do you do it? And we lean into a term called co-intelligence. It's taken from Ethan Mollick, who wrote a book called Co-Intelligence, and it's all about seeing AI as your co-worker, your colleague, sometimes possibly even your mentor and your coach, but one that is neurodiverse and one that actually needs to be micromanaged, because this is the key message here, is that you need to work with AI very closely, and you need to work with it in an area where you're an expert, so you can check the data and the information that's coming out. And if you can't, then you need to refer to someone that does have the expertise to understand the output that's coming from AI. Also, just a couple of things of understanding 3 sort of levels. One is automation. So this is looking at what kind of repetitive tasks can AI take away from you to allow you to go and do the more complex human work. Then there's augmentation, and this is how do we look at AI enhancing what we do, which is working very closely with it. So a great example is I was looking at a competency framework. I actually used AI to help me think about how do I approach it, how do I write it. It gave me all these new ideas of actually how to do it, more innovative, but it didn't take longer and it didn't take away the task itself. So it's actually about enhancing. And then more and more, it's looking at agents coming into the workplace. And this is where we need to think about what does it mean to have what we're calling a human in the AI loop. So, and I'm going to sort of get Laura to say sort of a summary on this area, but when you bring AI into the workplace, particularly as an AI agent, you need to have a human checking the work because it is probabilistic, as we've talked about. And going forward, HR play a role of being the custodian of the human in the AI loop. So as you put AI into the process that you're running or the product that you're running, at certain points, there needs to be a human essentially checking the work. This brings forth whole new questions around strategic workforce planning. What skills goes to AI? What skills goes to the human? How do you maintain the expertise to then check the work of AI? How do you bring new people in that maybe haven't done the job before, but now they're checking the work? And how do you truly build hybrid teams? And this is where we see HR playing a really critical role going forward. This can't just be left to IT or operations. So we'll move this sort of into our wrap up. Everyone that's online, we're just going to go for a couple of more minutes if you can stay with us. But if you need to go to that meeting, not a problem. And just leave some of your comments and we'll also share them out. The session is definitely recorded. That's why we've got all these kind of glitches because it's such a heavy tech. So we'll definitely be sharing that. So Laura, your comments around this HR as the custodian of the human in the loop. And I know you use something called the AHA principle as well when it comes to this. So just say a couple of words as your sort of final comments.
Yeah, I can't say it without sounding like Alan Parr. So our principle is what we use in, and you actually did a really great description of it, Natal, where if you're going to do use AI to help you with your frameworks, then you do AI assisted, is the first A. So it assists you in thinking bigger, adding more value to how you start in the first place instead of starting from a blank sheet. Then it's human led. So from that advice you've given me, what do I take? What's the right stuff? How do I iterate there? Then it's AI again. So it's like, how do you then use AI to then create the output? So it resources you, it creates the resource. And then it's human checked. So AI assisted, human led, resourced, human checked. And if you follow that loop consistently in the things that you're doing, we find it just helps keep the human in the loop and keep AI under control and kind of not going off and creating the rubbish that you often see.
Excellent. No, it's I love that. Every time I share that principle with people, they're like, "Oh, that's fantastic." So it's definitely a mantra. I'd have it at the top of the playbook, I think, in an organization. Helen, over to you. What's your final comments around HR being the custodian of the human in the AI loop? What's your thoughts?
I love that aha, Laura. By the way, I'm going to have to ingrain that in my brain as well. I think it's don't underestimate the importance of the people function in this. We can't do this without taking the people with us. And I also think there's something about those of us in HR roles really developing our own learning plan around it too. Yes, it's moving really fast. I'm doing, Natal, you know that I'm doing a deep dive course into generative AI in business myself to add to my credibility. So I've got, deep expertise in behaviour change and transformation. And I was like, well, I need to really understand what I'm talking about with generative AI as well. So I think, there's that credibility piece, but use your sharp elbows as well. Like, right from where I started at the beginning, if you can see that something's, already roadmapped and there's no one from HR or the people function, get involved because we can't do it. It's people at the very heart.
It is, and it's skills, it's development, it's culture change, it's transformation, and like a lot of transformation projects in the past, we've always had a role to play, and I think now more than ever, and actually, I feel like we have a role to play for humanity's sake as well. So, how do we actually craft workplaces that we want to be in now that AI is part of that? Yeah. Excellent. Okay, so just a couple of shout outs in terms of next steps for everyone. You can pop over to PXO Culture. We've got a lot of practical takeaways for you. You can also download our 2025 report that looked at the priorities, and co-intelligence was the theme. So that's a great starting point. It also actually looks at something called Build, Buy, Borrow, Bot, which is essentially how do you approach your skills and strategic workforce planning priorities and problems in your organization, which also will help you think about building these hybrid teams. Also, you can, of course, join us. So we are going to be releasing a report very soon. So Alice, who works with me, is busy writing away. And as the topic evolves, she's constantly bringing in new kind of elements, but we're going to release that report very soon. So you can use the QR code on your screen now to sign up to our newsletter if you're not on that yet, and we'll let you know when that's ready. And we're going to actually unpack a lot of these topics and also share, again, these great studies and practical tips. Also, if you go on LinkedIn, we're going to start a thread off the back of this workshop or webinar today to really keep this conversation alive. So go and join us on LinkedIn and ask your burning questions. And we're really going to kind of keep this continuation of conversation, but continuation of co-intelligence. So that's your kind of sort of quote and mantra to follow from this point onwards. So thank you so much for joining us today. We've had one comment, which was that from Stacey, which is I really enjoyed the discussion. It was also a masterclass on how to keep your cool when tech fails. I'm glad you thought that, because I wasn't so cool. That's nice that you thought so. Also taken some tips, so that's great. And then lots of shout outs, amazing as always, really helpful session, super thought-provoking, great session. So thank you, Laura and Helen, for staying cool as the tech kind of glitched and we fumbled along, but also sharing your open, honest insights and practical examples. It was fantastic. I really appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for joining us on the right link once you got there. Have a great day.